What is going on, guys? Carter here with Edge Mindset. I had a lot of people request a full video on this knife. This is the Real Steel Ultimatum Super Premium Awesome designed by Carson Tech Labs knife. Now, before we begin, this was sent to me for free from Real Steel. And, honestly, this may be the last knife that they send me because... no, I've got a pretty big complaint with this knife, but we're going to dive into it. So I've got, maybe two gripes with this knife. One is fairly minor. One I consider to be notable. Now, it's up to you to decide if it's actually a big deal or a deal breaker or anything like that, but it's definitely very, very notable for me, especially at the price point. Sent to me for review on the channel. As you know, I'm not biased towards brands other than Strider. Just kidding. Not really. I am. But, regular production knives like this, I am 100% honest. I'm going to tell you what it is, what I don't like, what I do like. When I get into like fan favorites, like, Striders and stuff, take my information with a grain of salt. But this one, I am 100% honest on it. I will tell you exactly what I think. 3.5-inch blade, 8 inches overall. Let's get a weight on this bad boy, and then we'll talk about what it is we're looking at on this knife here. So Carson Tech Labs, 3.8 ounces, under 4 ounces, baby. Come on, that is a sweet spot for a knife this size. Carson Tech Labs. If you want, you can go check out my video on the, holy crap, what's it called? Evolution, I believe. I believe the Real Steel Evolution, I've got a video on that where I talk more in depth with Carson Tech Labs, my history with them, how they were kind of ahead of their time in terms of Chinese makers. They were doing some really wild, high quality, innovative stuff early on, and I don't think the market was ready for it at that point. And now the only time I see Carson Tech Labs is their collaboration with Real Steel on the production standpoint, which they're still all very, very cool, but not as cool as those original Carson Tech Labs. So, Griffin Ultimatum, VANAX steel on this, which is absolutely outstanding. You can see the Carson logo right there. VANAX steel. VANAX is amazing. It's very expensive, super premium, near rust-proof type steel. Very, very good stuff. The stonewashing on this thing is outstanding. Full flat grind, cool opening hole. I love the silhouette of this thing. It's like a mix. It's aggressive enough that I like it, but it's also got a certain amount of elegance. The size is absolutely amazing. Really good jimping on the spine here. You've got a nice tip that you can do some detailed work with if you want to choke up. Just a very good utilitarian blade, and this full flat grind means it's going to go through material like crazy. Very consistent behind the edge here, about medium thickness. It's not particularly thin, right? It's not a hollow grind or anything like that, but it's not overly thick either. Very good plunge line you can see right there. Not going to get any smileys on this bad boy. You do kind of have a choil, although I wouldn't necessarily call it something I would recommend choking up on. But, if it works for you, it works for you, but it's kind of a slightly odd shape there. Nice, thick handle without being overly thick. Feels really good in the hand. It's got kind of that tapered feel to it. I know not everybody likes that. Some people, it feels awkward in their hand when it kind of tapers down from being wide to thin. For me, I don't have a problem with it, and this is not an extreme version of that kind of tapering right there. Now, the texturing, very aggressive, milled into the titanium here, and then it's sandblasted. So extremely, extremely grippy. This is the same pattern that like Hinderer uses on their knives. And then the opposite of this, I guess, so like the negative to... Well, I guess this is negative. So the positive version of this design, where instead of having these little diamond divots right here, where they're raised, that's what Demko uses on there. So you can tell it's just like a different variation of a milling pattern. Now, this isn't an exact copy of what, I hate to say the C word, that was a bad choice of words. This isn't the exact same type pattern used on Hinderers. It is slightly different in terms of, it's a little less diamondy and more pocketed. Feels really, really good, and it looks really, really good. You've got some nice details, some chamfering. This thing is made, for the most part, outstandingly well. You've got a standoff here. It's been blasted to match everything, and here's a little cool detail. I don't even know how they did this. There's no screw on the front, so we have a standoff, screws in the back. I don't know how that's secured. If we can see inside there, you can tell that there is a steel, I assume a steel. Let me get my mushroom magnet. Hard to tell, but I'm getting a little bit of a pull. I assume that's a steel liner that's inset into this side of the scale here, primarily for this safety, which I could honestly do without. I'm not a big fan of safeties. However, it's pretty inconspicuous, very nice, positive click into place and movement. It's not sloppy at all, doesn't make any noise, and you can see it's pretty low profile. I have been carrying this knife. You'll notice some dings on the pocket clip here. Speaking of the pocket clip, it is done very well as well. However, this is going to be a pocket shredder. You can see there's no like flat spot or anything under that clip, and it has quite a bit of tension. But it does go in and out of the pocket quite well. If you have really thick jeans, you might have to give it a little more unga-dungas to get it in there. But like I said, it is going to shred the crap out of your pocket. Now the logo here, real steel, just lasered on there, which at this price point feels a little cheap, if I'm being honest. By the way, these are like $285 direct from real steel. I don't know if they're going to be cheaper at retailers or what the deal might be. But when you get up to that $300 price point, I don't know, just lasering logos like that is a little cheap. As I say that, I've got my super expensive custom Strider here with a lasered logo on the pocket clip. So like I said, I have different parameters for review if I'm talking about production knives that are accessible for the masses, and then my own personal like things, hobby things that I'm into. But that's, you know, it doesn't deter at all from the knife, right? It's just more of an aesthetics thing. Very simple construction, single screw here. You've got your pivot screw there. It is nice and flattened on this side. No hardware entry points. It's not milled for hardware on this side. So that's very, very good. Action is nice when you press that button. Button is easy to actuate. It's not obnoxious, especially in the closed position here. You can see it's flat. I'm getting to the bad stuff here in a second. Okay, guys. The detent. So I'm doing all the good. So the detent on this knife is by far the best button lock detent I've ever had in my life. Like, it feels like a traditional ball detent. It is crazy. They tune this thing so... I mean, look at that. That doesn't seem like a button lock. Usually button locks are a little weaker, and they have like a longer pull. Like about here, they'll start trying to suck it in. Super crisp. Like, look how easily this thing reverse flicks with a plunge lock. You know, I'm not saying they're the only ones to do it, but it seems like whenever I get plunge locks, D10 is not something I'm going to be excited about. In this case, I'm pretty damn excited about it. It is really good. The action is really fantastic. Reverse flick is very, very nice. So here we come to my first gripe, and that is just access to the thumb hole from the front here. There's just not enough, and it might be my big giant sausage thumbs. Your results may vary, but I just can't really get in there for any sort of flick action. At least it's not comfortable. I got to kind of angle it this way, and then sometimes it doesn't work. Because they got this chamfering here, but it's still very, very thick, right? Like, there's just not that much to it. So I would have preferred maybe pull this back more, really get more of an angle in there, let us get in there. Just a minor critique. In the reverse flick, it's not as big of a deal because you're kind of positioned to get the meat of your thumb behind the nail is already kind of in place. So if you're a reverse flicker, and if you're a slow roll opener, you're not going to notice an issue. But if you like to flick with your thumb, may run into a little bit of issues with this little guy here. So that's kind of the first minor gripe. And like I said, very, very minor on this knife. Oh, before I get to the big gripe, I forgot to do a size comparison. Here it is against the PM2 right there, almost the exact same size. So it's kind of that cool, like, schmedium size knife, you know, where depending on how you look at it, right? Some people say the Para 2 is too small, but most people consider it a pretty sizable knife. You can see it's like almost a carbon copy in proportions. Even cutting edge is very similar. Pivot to pivot, total length, very, very similar. So if you like the PM2, you will like the size of this guy. So what is my gripe? Blade play. I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear it? Oops. Probably not. It has a little bit of up and down movement. And it just has to do with how they've done this plunge lock here. You can see all this grooving they've done there. Plunge locks are difficult, man. Up and down blade play is not uncommon in plunge locks. And another thing to keep in mind too, this may just be mine, right? Like I don't know the history of this knife. For all I know, every other one of these is perfect, and maybe this was actually sold to somebody and returned for that reason, and so they sent it to me for review. Seems a little backwards, but you never know what companies do, right? So I don't know. You've got it. This is a sample one of one, right? I only have this one, and I don't know anybody else that's handled one to ask them if they have up and down blade play. So it could be a non-issue, right? It might be just this particular example has a little bit of up and down play and yours won't. With plunge locks, it can be tricky because plunge locks are also, I don't really like plunge locks in general. I don't think they're a strong enough lock. They're rife with issues. They're very hard to tune perfectly well, right? So on the other side of the fence here, I have my Dracula, which is also a plunge lock, and that one has so much lock stick. Now, absolutely zero play because that button is just wedging right in there, but it has lock stick. This has no lock stick, right? I mean, obviously, why would it? Because it's not locking completely engaged. So I think my guess would be in an effort to make sure this doesn't have lock stick, they got a little too loose with the tolerances in the lockup on this particular example, and that allowed it to have a little bit of play. Now, does that affect the functionality? No. Does that affect lock strength? No, not at all. If this thing locked up like a bank vault, it wouldn't technically be any stronger than this version, right? Because those two things are not correlated. A little bit of play just means the interface is not wedging together as much as it could be, but it doesn't mean that it's unsafe or more unsafe than the version that did lock up rock solid, right? I'm trying to choose my words here because I'm not trying to say that plunge locks are the strongest lock out there. They're really not. This is a pretty good one, though. Pretty decent size on that pillar right there. But what I am saying is the fact that this does or doesn't completely lock up rock tight doesn't affect the lock strength at all in terms of it failing or slipping or anything. And it probably looks like you can see it moving. You probably can't. It's my fingers wiggling around, right? Because like, see how, I'm made of flesh and bone, so things wiggle. Really, it's something that you kind of feel. You just feel that little click, kind of like little thud there. You can tell that it's kind of moving up and down. Now, left and right, there's nothing, but that's adjustable with the pivot here. It's the up and down with that lock interface. So take with that what you will. Now, if this was a $200 knife, I would be less concerned. But $285, that's a pretty pricey knife for pretty pricey price point for a knife made overseas. That has kind of that lockup issue, especially since other companies are able to get away with it and stuff. I've got a $60 Kubi button lock that is a bank vault. So if they can figure it out, I don't know why Real Steel wouldn't figure it out. Now, message to Real Steel here. Listen, please keep sending me stuff. I absolutely love Carson Tech knives designs. I love this design, but I'm not gonna blow smoke to promote a knife to get more stuff sent into the channel. I'm gonna review it as it is. Overall, I do like this knife, but that, the up and down does kind of bug me a little bit. And the fact that it's a button lock at $285 in and of itself is a little suspect. I'm not saying it's wrong, right? My Dracula that I bought was $100 more than this, but it was also an titanium integral. But to me, button locks are generally kind of the cheaper of the locks. They're cheaper to produce, easier to make. And so if you're going to do a button lock on a premium level knife, just make sure it's tuned perfectly. All right, that's enough. I've rambled on enough. All right, guys, appreciate it. Take care. Comment down below, all that stuff. See ya.